Recording in progress.
Hi, Chair Lopez. Can we go ahead and start your video? Oh, I see you. And check your audio.
Yep. Testing.
Can you test one more time?
Yes, testing.
Great, thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'll be serving as chair for today's meeting because Chair Sergio Lopez is participating remotely. So I'd like to call to order this meeting of the VTA Board of Directors for Friday, June 26th, 2026. A few safety reminders. Please identify your nearest exit. For everyone's safety, please do not block the exit doors. The nearest AED is located at the public table at the back of the room. The restrooms are located outside the double doors adjacent to the reception area. In the unlikely event that we need to evacuate, our assembly area is in the plaza outside the building's double doors as shown on the screen. The address of our meeting location is also displayed on the screen. Welcome to members of the public who have joined us today. If you wish to address the board, you may complete a blue speaker card available at the public information table and submit it before the item is heard. Virtual attendees may use the raise hand function on Zoom or press *9 if they're dialing in. We will invite in-person attendees to speak first, followed by those on Zoom. A few general reminders for our public speakers. No chanting, yelling, applauding, or booing. Please adhere to our rules displayed on the public speaker timer slide. Each person will be given 1 minute to speak. As your name is called, please come forward and stay within your time limit. Thank you all for your cooperation. Colleagues, please keep mics muted until you're ready to speak. And if you wish to speak, please let me know by raising your hand or turning on the red light on your mic. Before we call the roll, I would like to note that today's agenda includes an item that is expected to have a lengthy presentation and discussion. I would encourage colleagues and presenters to keep our discussions focused so we can efficiently work through all agenda items while ensuring a productive meeting. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Chair Lopez to make the required disclosures.
Thank you. I'm appearing remotely under just cause provisions, and there's no one in the room with me. Is there anything else, Evelyn?
Could you identify that it's based under the multi-jurisdictional rule, Chair?
Yes, based under the multi-jurisdictional rule.
Okay, thank you, Chair Lopez. Appreciate it. And as a reminder, because we have a remote participant, all action items will be decided by a roll call vote. Elaine, would you please call roll?
Yes, Vice Chair. Abekoga? Present. Arenas? Absent. Bozo? Absent. Burt? Absent. Candelas? Absent. Cohen? Absent. Young? Absent. Foley? Present. Jane?
Here.
Thank you. Kamei? Absent. McAllister? Absent. Montano? Here. Montano present. Moore? Absent. Mulcahy?
Here.
Sell?
Here.
Turner?
Here.
Weinberg?
Here.
Mahan?
Here.
Chair Lopez?
Here.
We have a quorum, Vice Chair.
Okay, great. And I must say you all look great in your VTA jerseys, by the way. I love all the blue in the room here. Okay, so we're on to item 1.2, orders of the day. A revised agenda was released earlier this week to reflect that a closed session item was removed. Copies of the revised agenda are before you and available on the public table. To ensure that we have sufficient time for the presentation and discussion on the regular agenda, staff requests that item number 4, general public comment, be taken under item 9.3. We are also removing 3 properties from agenda item 5.1, resolutions of necessity. Agreements have been reached with the property owners Tan Van Nguyen and Tan Le and Bascom Ventures LLC. Any other changes from colleagues? I'm not seeing any. Any additional changes from staff? None that I'm aware of, not seeing any. May I have a motion and a second to approve orders of the day?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Elaine, can we please call the roll?
Abicoga,
Aye.
Arenas. Since Arenas is not here, I call Young. Young is also absent. Candelas is absent. Since Cohen is absent, I'll call on Mulcahy. Mulcahy, aye. Foley,
Aye.
Jane,
Yes.
Kamei is absent. Sell,
Yes.
thank you. Turner,
Yes.
Weinberg,
Yes.
Mahan,
Aye.
Lopez. Is that an aye, Chair?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passed.
Great, thank you. Next is item 2, closed session. We have one closed session item. At this time, I'd like to welcome any members of the public who wish to address the board on the closed session item. Okay, neither in person nor online? Okay, we will now close public comment and we will recess to closed session. We'll see you all very soon.
Recording stopped.
Test.
Recording in progress.
All right, colleagues, we're going to continue here. We're now back in open session. I'll ask Evelyn Tran, General Counsel, to provide the closed session report.
Thank you, Chair. There were no reportable actions taken in closed session this morning.
Great, thank you. We do not have items under item number 3. We will hear public comment under item 9.3. So that takes us to item 5, public hearings. Item 5.1 is to conduct a hearing and adopt a resolution of necessity for 4 properties for VTA's Bascom Complete Streets project. The full staff recommendation is displayed on the screen. Before we begin the staff presentation, I would like to briefly outline the process for the resolution of necessity hearing so that everyone understands how the hearing will proceed. At the conclusion of each property presentation, staff will pause and I will open the public hearing for that property. At that time, I will invite the property owner or their representative to address the board. Property owners or their representatives will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. General public comment will be heard after all properties have been presented and the owners or their representatives have had an opportunity to speak. Members of the public who would like to address the board on the resolution of necessity will be given 1 minute to speak. I'll turn it over to Jesse O'Malley Solis, Director of Multimodal Planning and Real Estate, to kick us off.
Good morning, Chair Mahan and directors of the board. My name is Jessie O'Malley Solis. I'm VTA's Director of Multimodal Planning and Real Estate. And today with me here is Marjan Lebrando, VTA's Right-of-Way Manager, and project representatives Hassan Basma and Sean O'Keefe to present the items that you're going to be hearing and help answer any technical questions. Today, we're here to review and consider adoption of 4 resolutions of necessity. You'll see in your original packets that there were originally 8. This team has been doing a fantastic job to come to resolutions and settlements outside of this resolution of necessity process, and I want to acknowledge that. These resolutions of necessity are for Bascom Complete Streets project, the I-880 to Hamilton Avenue project, and at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Hassan to walk through the project location.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Jesse.
Pull it closer. There.
Hello? Yeah. Thank you, Jesse, and good morning. Again, my name is Hassan Basma. I'm the project manager for the Bascom Complete Street project. I want to start by giving a quick background on the project itself. The Bascom Avenue Complete Street project is a Measure B funded project, which is a bicycle and pedestrian program. A feasibility study was completed in 2019 and adopted in August 2020, following intensive community and stakeholders engagement and input. The feasibility study looked at 6 miles of Bascom Avenue from Highway 85 in the south to I-880 in the north. And on the slide above, the project location is the northern 3-mile corridor from Hamilton Avenue to I-880. It is a multi-jurisdictional project that passes through unincorporated Santa Clara County, the Caltrans, and the cities of Campbell and San Jose. Major destinations along the corridor includes Delma High School, San Jose City College, Valley Medical Center, Bascom Library, and the Vista Center for the Blind. VTA also currently runs bus Route 61 along the corridor. The goal of the project is to improve safety and reduces crashes by reducing speeding, building new signalized pedestrian crossings, and separated bike lanes, closing sidewalk gaps, and improving lighting. It is also to improve accessibility to daily destinations such as jobs, schools, and health centers. It also encourages walking, cycling, and the use of public transit. The scope of the project includes accommodating physically separated bikeways, installing sidewalks to close gaps, widening of sidewalks, improving intersections for pedestrians and bicyclists, and adding street lights. And with that, I turn it back to Jesse.
Thank you. There are 4 findings that the board must make in order to adopt each resolution of necessity. First, that the public interest and necessity require the project. Second, that the project is planned or located in the most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. Third, that the property interests identified in the resolution of necessity are necessary for the project. And fourth, that an offer of just compensation has been made. This is not a hearing about compensation. It is not the end of negotiations, and the actions today do not result in immediate seizure of property or a final acquisition. Negotiations can and do continue after this board action. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Marjan and Sean to walk through subject matter properties and project impacts included in today's resolutions.
Thank you, Jesse. The first subject property is 519 South Bascom Avenue, owned by Judith Seng and Angela Y. Chen. The property is used as a commercial building with parking and access areas along South Bascom Avenue, and the total property area is approximately 5,400 square feet or 0.124 acres. VTA made its offer on March 11, 2026, and the acquisition needed is a 193 square foot temporary construction easement. Following the offer, VTA continued follow-up by email and phone. Earlier in the negotiations, the owner indicated she needed additional time to review the matter with family. After continued follow-up, and as the RON process approached, VTA also sent up follow-up correspondence regarding the potential resolution of necessity hearing and requested continued negotiations. During VTA's outreach the week of June 22nd, a family member confirmed receipt of the notice of intent. VTA explained the need to proceed with the resolution of necessity process due to the project schedule and the lack of progress toward agreement. VTA and the property owners have agreed to coordinate a site visit with the project team to continue working toward a voluntary acquisition. Because the parties have not reached agreement, and in order to meet the project schedule, staff is recommending this temporary construction easement for a resolution of necessity. I'll turn it over to Sean to briefly describe the property exhibit and temporary construction easement area.
Thank you, Marjan. As seen in the highlighted area in the exhibit, the TCE is required for sidewalk construction. The property owner will be notified 4 weeks and 48 hours ahead of construction, and once construction commences, the contractor will have 30 days to complete the work adjacent to the property.
That concludes staff's presentation for this subject property.
Okay, thank you. I believe we now formally open the hearing. Is that correct? Okay. So I'd like to invite the property owner or their representative to address the board.
We have one online, Vice Chair. Kevin, you may begin speaking when ready.
My apologies. This is the court reporter.
I'm sorry, there's none then.
Okay, so are we able to move on to the next property then? Okay, let's proceed with the next property presentation.
The next subject property is 190 North Bascom Avenue, owned by Mark Maselli and Roya Amati. The property is used as a commercial building with parking and access areas along North Bascom Avenue, and the total property area is approximately 9,990 square feet, or 0.23 acres. VTA made its offer on March 19, 2026, and the acquisition needed is a 346 square foot temporary construction easement and 148 square foot partial fee acquisition. Following the offer, VTA continued to follow up by phone, voicemail, and email regarding the owner's review and potential counteroffer. The owner raised questions and concerns regarding the after condition of the property, payment timing, potential tax issues, agreement language, and future property impacts. VTA provided responses to those questions, updated exhibits, outreach materials, and agreement documents for review, and continued discussions as the RON process approached. The parties are currently in compensation negotiations. On June 25, 2026, VTA conducted a virtual meeting with the owner to discuss the owner's additional questions and concerns, provide available information, and identify remaining items for continued review. Because the parties have not reached agreement, and in order to meet the project schedule, staff has recommended this temporary construction easement and partial fee acquisition for a resolution of necessity. I'll turn it over to Sean to briefly describe the temporary construction easement and the partial fee acquisition plat.
Thank you, Marjan. As you can see highlighted in the exhibit here on the corner, the TCE is required for the new sidewalk and ramp reconstruction. Next slide. And this is the fee acquisition piece, which is required for the reconstructed sidewalk. The property will be notified, or property owner will be notified 4 weeks and 48 hours ahead of construction, and the contractor will be required to complete construction activities within 30 days when they start.
I want to note for the record that the property owner, Mark Maselli, is in attendance virtually on Zoom. As part of the resolution of necessity hearing process, they will be invited to address the board on this resolution. That concludes staff presentation for the subject property.
Okay, thank you. I now would like to invite the property owner or their representative to come forward and address the board.
If the property owner is in Zoom, may we please request that you use the raise hand function so that we can unmute you?
Mr. Mark, go ahead, please, and begin speaking when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll keep it short. Like Marjan said, I did meet with staff yesterday, and they answered a lot of my questions that I had. And like he also mentioned, we're pretty close on coming to a final agreement, and I would assume that would probably happen in the next 2-3 weeks. So that's about all I really wanted to say. And I hope this project gets going and gets done in a timely manner. So that's about it.
Thank you. Okay. Elaine, do we have other public comment, or do we go on to the next property?
We can go to the next property, Chair.
Great, thank you. Let's do that.
The next subject property is 2009 McDaniel Avenue, owned by Howard Sussman, trustee of the Howard Sussman 2005 Family Trust. The property is used as a single-family residence, and the total property area is approximately 8,907 square feet, or 0.20 acres. VTA made its offer on March 11, 2026, and the acquisition needed is an 88 square foot temporary construction easement. Following the offer, VTA continued to follow up by phone, voicemail, email, text, and written correspondence regarding the owner's review. The owner asked whether driveway access from Bascom Avenue would remain after construction, and VTA confirmed that access would be maintained. As the RON process approached, VTA continued outreach regarding the potential resolution of necessity hearing and requested continued negotiations. The owner's legal counsel raised concerns regarding repair and restoration language, including how potential damage within and around the temporary construction easement area would be addressed. VTA's legal counsel is coordinating with the owner's counsel regarding proposed revised language to address those concerns. Because the parties have not reached agreement, and in order to meet the project schedule, staff is recommending this temporary construction easement for a resolution of necessity. I'll turn it over to Sean to briefly describe the property exhibit and the temporary construction easement area.
Thank you, Marjan. As you can see in the highlighted area, the TCE required will be for the sidewalk and ramp reconstruction. The property owner will be notified 4 weeks and 48 hours ahead of construction, and the contractor will have 30 days once construction begins to complete the work within the adjacent parcel.
That concludes staff presentation for this subject property.
Great. We will now hear from the property owner or their representative.
If you are a property owner, please raise your hand, use the raise hand function in Zoom so we can unmute you. I don't see any hands raised in Zoom, Chair.
Okay.
Nor do we have anyone here in person.
All right, then we can move on to the next property.
The last subject property is 75 North Bascom Avenue, owned by Han P. Lowe and Lalonta Ozzie Boyd. The property is used as a two-story commercial office building with parking and access areas along North Bascom Avenue, and the total property area is approximately 7,104 square feet, or 0.16 acres. VTA made its offer on March 11, 2026, and the acquisition needed is a 142 square foot temporary construction easement. Following the offer, VTA continued follow-up by email and phone regarding the owner's review. The owner asked about temporary construction easement period, the expected use period, and whether driveway and parking access would be maintained during construction. VTA responded and confirmed that driveway and parking access would be maintained. As the resolution of necessity process approached, VTA continued outreach regarding the potential resolution of necessity hearing and requested continued negotiations. On June 24, 2026, VTA made contact with the owner, and the parties agreed to coordinate a site visit with the project team and continue compensation negotiations in an effort to reach a voluntary acquisition. Because the parties have not yet reached agreement, and in order to meet the project schedule, staff is recommending this temporary construction easement for a resolution of necessity. I'll turn it over to Sean to briefly describe the property exhibit and temporary construction easement area.
Thank you, Marjan. As you can see in the highlighted area on the exhibit, there's a temporary construction easement is required for sidewalk construction and ramp construction. The property owner will be notified 4 weeks and 48 hours ahead of construction, and the contractor will have 30 days to complete the construction activities within this area.
That concludes staff presentation for this subject property. I'll turn it back to Jesse for the closing recommendation.
VTA will continue to work with each property owner as negotiations continue. However, in order to maintain our project schedule for Bascom Complete Streets and secure the property interests necessary for construction, operation, and maintenance of the project, we are asking the board today to close the hearing, adopt the 4 resolutions of necessity, and this concludes our presentation. We are available for any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. I will now open general public comment for item 5.1. Speakers will have one minute. Do we have any comment cards?
Vice Chair, we do not have any hands raised in Zoom, and I do not have any requests to speak at the in-person location.
Great, thanks. We will close public comment for item 5.1. Do we have questions from colleagues? Okay, not seeing any. May I
Just a motion.
have a motion? Yes.
Just a motion to approve the resolutions of necessity on all submitted parcels.
Second.
Great. And to close the hearing. I just needed to ask for that. Thank you. Yes, please. And I would like to ask the maker of the motion to read for the record the APN numbers as noted on the screen. You didn't realize you were signing up for so much work.
Assessor parcel number 277-30005. Would you like me to list the name of the owners as well? parcel number 274-18077, parcel number 274-40026, parcel number 274-41115, and parcel number 277-04062.
Chair, if I may.
I believe we removed the last property. Is
Yes.
that correct? I
Yeah.
see the
Yes.
slide is
That's
still
right.
including one that we had removed earlier.
That was our oversight, Chair. I apologize.
Then I exclude the last parcel.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so I believe we are ready for a roll call vote.
Yes. Abecoga. Arenas.
Yes.
Thank you. Candelas is absent. Cohen is absent, so I'll call on Mulcahy.
Yes.
Foley.
Aye.
Jane.
Yes.
Kamei is absent. Sell.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
Weinberg.
Yes.
Mahan.
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to item 6, reports. I'll ask anyone giving a report to keep it extremely brief so that we can focus on our main business today. The reports for items 6.1A, 6.1D, and 6.1E are in the online packet and public table. There are no reports for items 6.1B and 6.1C. I will now open public comment for all items under 6.1. Elaine, do we have any?
Yes, Chair, we have one. Roland, go ahead, please, and begin speaking.
Thank you, Marjo.
Morning, Chair Mahan, Board Directors. My comment pertains to item 6.1E. This is the very best report ever. But the question is, why did we have for a grand jury to make this happen? With regard to timing, why wasn't this report posted last week instead of yesterday morning, thereby making basically impossible for any kind of meaningful written public comment? That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
That ends public comment.
Okay, great. Suds? I'm sorry, Director Jane.
It's okay. Suds is great. So I agree with Roland. I think these reports come out way too late. It doesn't give me as a board member enough time to read them if I have other things. Yesterday I was in Roseville for an NCPA meeting. I think they should come out earlier. What's missing from this report was we did have a discussion about our CapEx and OpEx liabilities for this project. That was not reflected in the minutes here. And then we did have a brief discussion about maintenance yard. And then one thing that was key was that I think there was a confirmation that we're going to hire an expert to help us with the target price, pain share, gain share contracting model, because it's not a very well understood or tested methodology, and we're going into this and we need to have better guidance. So I think that was one of the conclusions from that meeting. That's all I wanted to say.
Great. Thank you for sharing that additional detail. Do we have other comments, questions? Okay, then we will move on to item 6.2, the general manager's report.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. I'm just going to go to the next slide. We have a presentation on headquarters. I'm going to defer that until next, our next board meeting in August. So, okay, so this is the first slide, which was the FIFA one. Yes, so as I begin this, I wanted to show you what our ridership is. This is preliminary. We're still going through each of them, but you know, and last night we actually had 41,700 people come. So we pretty much are shattering what we could do. And I love to tease our chief operating officer who thought we couldn't beat Super Bowl. He didn't know our team had it in us. He should have known. Anyways, we didn't think anybody could beat Taylor Swift in Super Bowl 60. However, each match has generated ridership well above those events, and I will forward the ridership figures as we find those, as well as the overall ridership for the system. This is strictly just what is going into and out of Levi Stadium. With 5 matches down and 1 to go, we're now in the home stretch of this service. However, the final game will include the United States, so we very might well have saved the best for last. But then again, the United States tends to be very car-oriented, so hopefully they will take transit. Either way, we will be ready to provide world-class transit service for fans. And I really want to extend my sincere gratitude to all the people who have helped us through here. We have a 100-some ambassadors who've been working these shifts, security out there, well, everybody who out of operations has had a major role in being able to do this, whether it be an operator, maintenance, waypower and signal, whoever. We've been able to get our service out there. We're using pretty much every train that we have to get out there, and I could be proud of the agency. I've been out on the system every single game. I don't leave until we've shut down the EOC every night, and so I've sat in the operations control center. I go out and ride with the passengers, so it's been a great experience. And yes, we do have a few complaints here and there, but overall, much more kudos than, you know, the 1 or 2 complaints that come in each evening. So let's go to the next slide. I'd like to congratulate bus operator Sarabpreet Singh, who represented VTA at the International Bus Rodeo in Salt Lake City last month. He turned in an outstanding performance for his first bus rodeo, finishing 22nd out of 80 operators. So that actually is quite outstanding, considering it's the first time, and there's some areas that we don't do in our bus rodeo that he will be learning about and being prepared for should he win next year to represent us. So like many of the first-time participants, he's not familiar with all of that, as I mentioned, and so we actually hope we do better next year, but he actually did a fantastic job. When it came to actually driving, he was definitely in the top 5, actually. His scores were top 5 in the driving area. So next slide. Moving to legislative matters, I just want to give you a brief update on AB 2263. As a reminder, VTA is a bill sponsor, and former VTA Board Chair, Assembly Member Ash Kalra is the author. And this legislation would allow authorize VTA to create a preference for our employees for housing units that we built, enhancing opportunities for VTA employees to live in the community they serve and thereby reduce their commutes and carbon footprints. And I guess it's not really housing we build, it would be housing that is built on our ground leased land. If the bill is passed into law, VTA would be the first transit agency in the nation to have this authority. So we're looking forward to it. It's very similar to what some of the school districts are doing and others are doing. And then on the next slide, I would just want to give you a sense of where this bill is. It's moving through the legislative process and is now in the Senate, where it will be heard by the Senate Transportation Committee on June 30th. And I want to thank our employee unions and community partners that have endorsed the bill, as well as Chair Lopez and Director Abacoga, who have testified on its behalf in Assembly committees. And additionally, I want to thank Director Turner in advance, who will be testifying on VTA's behalf next week. And then the last slide I have is finally, this is the very end of my report. As you're aware, earlier this month, VTA received a report from the Santa Clara County Civil Grand Jury. We appreciate the work of the Civil Grand Jury and will carefully review its findings and recommendations. However, VTA will provide a formal response within the required 90 days, and we'll present our draft response to the findings at the August board meeting. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you, Carolina. Great stuff going on. I want to echo the thanks to the entire team effort, from operators, security, to ambassadors, everybody who's helping us truly welcome the world. It's been an amazing thing to see and a great source of civic pride for us as a valley, and transit's been really at the heart of making this successful. And we've still got a long way to go, but great first couple weeks of World Cup here in our region, and VTA has been a huge part of it. So just want to echo all the thanks. Why don't we see if we
Chair,
Yes.
a comment.
I was just going to say, let's see if we have clarifying questions from the board, and we'll start with Director Jane.
I just want to say that I was an ambassador for 2 games. I was at the Milpitas station before the game for the Switzerland-Jordan match, and then I was at Lickmill with Turkey and Paraguay after the game. And it really was seeing VTA at its finest. I mean, we moved so many people. After the Turkey-Paraguay game, within 90 minutes, basically there was no one left. There were just stragglers that were partying somewhere or something. But we actually had 6 trains on the tracks to take more people, and we had a lot of buses after we had moved all those people. So we were well prepared for that event, and again, VTA at its finest. So thank you. Got to work with Menominee, Jonathan Cass, Summer Gonzalez, and Nani on the platform. It was fun.
Yeah, I want to thank Director Jenk, because it really did help a lot. So, you know, every ambassador's piece of work helps. There's a million different things we need to do out in the field. So actually, we need everybody that we had coming, and we're really prepared. We've had to add a lot more for last night's game and then for next week. So any of you want to volunteer, please let me know.
All right, good to know. Other questions or comments? Okay, we're going to move to public comment on item 6.2. I do have a card for in-person comment. James Wright. Welcome.
You guys did a wonderful job with FIFA. Paul, Prague, and everybody in the customer service center, they were wonderful. Sylvia was wonderful. Oh, we are all wonderful. You guys did a wonderful job with FIFA. And I was on the light rail a couple weeks ago, and I saw some security guard told a person no smoking and to put it out, and they kind of got a little argument. If that happens, they need the security guard immediately needs to tell the passenger to get off the train automatically. Also, I'm really proud of customer service. Paul gets number 1 star, Sylvia gets number 2 star, Paul gets number 3 star, and everybody did a good job. It was all your employees on buses and light rail. They were very kind. When are your new ticket vending machines going to be all ready? Because I go to the Great America Light Rail station. Some of them are broken. All right, the new upgrades. All right, bye.
Great. I don't believe we have any other in-person comments. How about online?
We have 2 online speakers. First is Jordan, and then followed by Roland. Jordan, go ahead, please, and begin speaking when ready.
Hi, congratulations on the great World Cup service. I agree, it's been great and been substantially improved from the Super Bowl. I would like to suggest some improved communication around the maps for the modified service. I was on a platform with a family and they're trying to figure out, do we get on the green line or the blue line? And I was telling them like, oh, you know, get on the blue line. It's a modified service. It's not the same as what's on the map, but you know, they didn't, you know, they eventually listened to me and got on the right train, but people want to believe the maps that they see at the station in the trains. And so I think it could be very valuable if we put up maps in the stations and in the trains showing the modified schematic, and I think that will be a lot improved experience for our riders on Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Roland. Go ahead, please, and begin speaking when ready.
Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to echo the first speaker's comment about how well FIFA is run. I experienced it myself. And the only issue I experienced is that it looks like every single escalator south of the Discovery Museum to Santa Teresa is inoperable, which is unfortunate for people with mobility issues. With regards to the grand jury report, I would like to take this opportunity to make it absolutely clear that I personally have nothing whatsoever to do with the filing of that complaint, because I knew that it would have a disastrous effect on the passing of the original measure in the fall. Thank you.
And that concludes public comment.
Okay, great. Thank you. We are on to item 6.3, Chairperson's Report. Chair Lopez.
Yeah, I'll be extremely brief. Do we have a slide? I was honored to attend the graduation of the security transit officers. This is our first class of 9 officers, and this program has been a long time in the making. First discussed this years ago when I was with SSTPO. So huge credit to the leadership of Aston Green, our security chief, of Caroline, our GM, for making this happen. But I think it's really essential to the future of this agency. Having transit officers who will not just keep folks safe, but also support fare collections and really be ambassadors for our program. So it's a unique way of doing it that I think is in accordance with our values, and just cannot applaud this initial class enough for being pioneers in getting this program off the ground. And that concludes my report.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the report, and congratulations to our new security transit officers. Do we have public comment? Actually, let me start with, we will go to public comment first on item 6.3. No? Okay, then coming back to the board, would any board members like to comment, questions? Not seeing any? Okay, then we are able to move on to the consent agenda, which includes items 7.1 through 7.6. Members of the public who would like to address the board on a consent item are encouraged to submit a blue comment card or raise the hand feature on Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Turning to colleagues, are there any items any board members would like to pull from or add to the consent agenda? Any abstentions or recusals? And we'll go to Director Mulcahy.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be recusing myself from item 7.4. I've got a rental income property from Without Front Media, unrelated to the properties in today's agenda item.
Okay, so we'll take up, that was 7.4, you said. Right. So we will take up that item separately. Before we take a motion, I guess I will very briefly pull item 7.6. I just have one question. I'm not pulling it for a separate vote, but I just, on the VSV2 program site security services contract award, very supportive of securing our property while it awaits construction activities. However, I'm hearing from residents specifically in the 28th Street Little Portugal neighborhood about concerns with blight and lack of maintenance on some of the right-of-way that VTA owns. And I just would like to know, in addition to providing security, what are we doing? What is our ongoing commitment to keeping these sites clean and blight-free and managing weeds and all the rest?
Great. Good morning, directors. I'm Erica Rokes, Deputy Director of External Affairs for VTA's BART Silicon Valley program. Thank you for mentioning this. VTA wants to be a good neighbor and takes this seriously. We have heard of these concerns as well and have been in communication. We did have our facilities team out a couple of weeks ago for the areas north of Santa Clara Street, and yesterday and today and into next week for the areas south of Santa Clara Street. In addition, we have a long-term maintenance plan, routine maintenance plan that is being implemented now for all of the properties that we own related to the BART Phase 2 program. And in addition, the benefit of this security contract is that those sites will be observed and overseen by the security contractor, who will be able to flag needs for maintenance outside of those routine timeframes in addition.
Okay, that's good to know. Given the level of concern we've heard, would it be possible to just share that updated protocol or process, what the expectation is with relevant directors? Certainly, I would suggest relevant electeds. I think I see Supervisor Young here in the chamber who represents this area. I know we have some San Jose City Council members who have been hearing a lot from constituents. I think it would be helpful for us to close the loop with the community that we have a new security contract, and here's what the protocol is, so that it's not just reactive and complaint-based, based on the neighbors getting angry at us.
Most definitely. We will provide an update.
That would be helpful. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. So we will entertain actually, let's go to public comment first on consent, then we'll come back for motions.
We do not have any hands raised in Zoom, and I do not have any requests to speak at the in-person location, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Director Abikoga.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I didn't want to pull the item 7.5, which is authorization to issue RFPs for the TOD projects at Milpitas and Ohlone. I support the item. I just wanted to make a request. I understand from the real estate team that adding a fare gate or ADA ramp requirement directly into the Milpitas Center RFP at this point could slow down the process or be cost prohibitive for a developer. We've talked about doing like a pilot project for fare gates, and Milpitas seems to be likely a good place to do it. So I don't want to slow down the process, but I did want to make sure that the TOD development plans for Milpitas do not inadvertently prevent VTA from adding fare gates or a backup ADA access option to the light rail platform in the future. I've mentioned before that I think Milpitas is the easiest location to do a fare gate pilot, and so I'm hoping, I'd like to be able to reserve that option there. The issue with the ADA access is that when the elevator is out of service, and I think we just heard about that, riders with mobility needs have no way to access or exit the light rail platform to connect to BART at this time. So my request is not to delay the RFP, but to just make sure that the site planning preserves VTA's future flexibility if we decide to pursue fare gates or a backup ADA access solution later. Is that possible?
Let's see. Thank you for your comments. I know that we've had some correspondence with your office. My understanding is there's nothing that's occurring with this RFP that will prevent some of your commentary from being implemented in the future with future board actions, but I'm going to pass it to Jocelyn to give a little more detail.
That's correct. The location where we are looking for the TOD RFP to be released is in that corner parcel. And as I understand, some of the improvements that you're looking for are more directly related to inside the station and access to the station. So we don't believe that this TOD RFP is the appropriate place to include those improvement requests. The other thing is that we are anticipating that many of the proposals that we receive through the RFP will be for likely 100% affordable housing projects, and many of the sources used for those projects could not be used for a fare gate improvement project.
Okay.
So this TOD RFP would not preclude future opportunities to make those improvements when financing and funding is available.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I think one of the things is that when we're doing the review, that we're aware of that. So that's really the request, is that we're not precluding that.
Yeah, we'll absolutely, when we're receiving proposals, we'll make sure there's no anticipated conflicts in the design site plans. And if we do see anything like that, that would be a potential conflict, we will flag it. We will, of course, bring any recommended proposals to the board, so you will also have oversight on site plan and approvals of development proposals.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. We took public comment, so I think we're ready for other questions or a motion.
Move approval of consent excluding item 7.4.
I'll second.
Great. Thank you. All right, I don't see any other hands up. Let's take a roll call vote.
All right, this is for the consent agenda 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.5, and 7.6. Abikoga?
Aye.
Arenas?
Yes.
Candelas is absent. Cohen is absent, so I'll call on Mulcahy.
Yes.
Foley?
Aye.
Jane?
Yes.
Kamei is absent. Sell?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Weinberg?
Yes.
Mahan?
Aye.
Lopez?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passed.
Great, thank you. We have a remaining item.
Then I'll move item 7.4.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands. Let's take a roll call vote.
Thank you. This is for item 7.4. Abikoga?
Aye.
Arenas?
Yes.
Candelas is absent. Cohen is absent, so I'll call on Mulcahy.
Recused.
Recuse. Foley?
Aye.
Jane? Oh, he's not there, absent. Kamei is absent. Sell,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Weinberg,
Yes.
Mahan,
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Great, thank you all. Okay, we'll now continue with the regular agenda. Item 8.1, an action item to amend and restate the design-build agreement with KST for BSV2 Contract Package 2 Tunnel and Track Work. The full staff recommendation is displayed on the screen. Tom McGuire, Chief Capital Mega Projects Delivery Officer, will begin the presentation, and I believe our GM may also have some opening
Yeah, I have
comments.
some, just while they're getting set up. So I just want to say that today you will be hearing and considering a major item related to the tunnel contract for the BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 project. This is a culmination of extensive work over the last year with the staff, taking the feedback and comments from this board and our BSV2 Oversight Committee to ensure that this critical project advances but remains conscious of growing cost and schedule pressures. Tom and his team are going to be providing the detailed presentation on a proposed path forward with our tunnel contractor, Kiewit Shea Trailer, on the critical tunnel work for the Phase 2 project that is being brought after multiple discussions at this board and oversight committee. The direction and oversight provided by you has definitely guided us with the necessary technical, commercial, and risk analysis that we need to do required for us to get to this point today. After the decision this board made last summer to initiate an off-ramp with the contractor, I wanted to ensure this project was maintaining momentum while aware of the inflationary pressures many of you heard at the BART BSV2 committee, if you were there, from Peter Rogoff speaking this spring regarding the construction cost escalation and are seeing in our own communities. While navigating through our current future landscape with both of our federal partners at the VTA, along with our state and regional partners, we are presenting a path forward. To this end, I still continue to challenge the staff to develop this path forward, and that considers some of the key items, including timing of our full funding grant agreement with VTA, project cash flow needs, and any potential impacts to the overall program, cost, schedule, and risk, most importantly, risk. It was also important that staff continued to explore innovative contracting opportunities to better manage these risks and reduce costs, all while making sure we get the best deal to advance critical project work. With all this in mind, it is prudent for us to ensure that we are striking that right balance between maintaining project momentum while not putting this agency at too great a risk level. I know I continue to say that, but I'm actually pushing that point quite a bit. As you will hear shortly, today's recommendation on this new target price contract model and authorization of pre-tunnel construction aims to strike that balance without overcommitting VTA as we work through a rebaselining of our project budget and discussions with all of our funding partners through this summer and the fall. And a future recommendation for additional tunnel authorization work may be presented, but not until there are answers to the broader questions about overall program cost and funding, along with the confidence in our ability to manage any associated risks that may come with such a decision and the ability that we have a project for that tunnel. With that, I will turn this over to Tom to introduce the team along with our risk subject matter expert to walk through this item and answer any questions you may have. And I don't know if we have our risk. Oh, yes, we do. There's Bob, and any questions. So thank you, and I look forward to the discussion. And I just want people to understand that today is about awarding, authorizing us to execute an amendment with Kiewit Shea Trailer, and that primarily is not awarding the tunnel contract, but it would be saying that we would be moving forward, plan to move forward with Kiewit Shea Trailer. We still have the opportunity to not do that, but move forward with Kiewit Shea Trailer for this new contract format. Okay, Tom, take it over.
Okay, thank you, Carol, and thank you for the introduction. I'm going to introduce the team that's with me today. I'm Tom McGuire, Chief Mega Projects Officer. I'm joined by Sarah Wilson, VTA's Construction Director for BSV2, Sarah Hersom from our Program Management team, Anna Hermelin, our outside counsel from Ashurst, and in the front row, and he'll step up when his slides are up, Bob Goodfellow, an independent risk expert from Aldea, who's working with our PMT. As Sarah said, this is, rather as Carolyn said, this is a significant recommendation we're making about a potential path forward for the program, and we come to you on the back of some really great conversations we've had with you as a board, with our stakeholders, with the industry, with our funders, and serious negotiations with our contractors. Today's presentation is going to have 3 parts. I'll give an overview and a background of the action, and Anna will explain the target price risk-sharing model that we're proposing for this contract. We'll take a brief break at that point for any clarifying questions about what the action is, and then we will have Sarah and Bob go into a much more detailed presentation about what we refer to as the business case. This presentation was given at the Oversight Committee, and the point of this is to weigh different options and help you understand why we're making this recommendation and what alternatives we considered. And then finally, we'll wrap up with a proposed path forward and some discussion of the funding considerations. So what we're here to do, again, as Carolyn said, is to make a recommendation about amending and restating an existing contract, the Progressive Design Build contract that was entered into by this agency in 2022 with QHA Trailer, and which has produced to date multiple early works packages, including the successful west portal that you see under construction today, but also the design of the 53-foot tunnel. And the question we have had in front of us since early 2025 is, what is the right way to move forward? And I thought it would be important for all of us to take a quick trip back to remember how much and how meaningful the conversations we've had with this board have been in helping us chart this path forward. We'll think all the way back to early 2025 when we identified a significant gap between the fixed price bid that QHA Trailer gave us at that time and our internal cost estimate. We described that as a price bust and came to you and began seriously talking about off-ramping QHA Trailer, moving forward with a different contractor. You gave us several pieces of advice which we followed through on. You asked us to form a contract task force, co-chaired by myself and our general counsel, Evelyn Tran, to make recommendations about how risk could be best shared, what the industry is doing, and what options the VTA has to move forward. Part of that task force also did what's called an industry sounding. We talked to 10 major tunneling contractors, pretty much anybody else who could build a tunnel of this size, and brought back significant findings and shared with you about what price, risk profile, and contract model would be likely if we were to move on to a different contractor. That led to the board authorizing us to pursue the off-ramp, and I cannot emphasize enough how important that decision was in resetting our relationship and generating the leverage and resolve that was necessary to show publicly that we were serious about looking for other options if we couldn't get a price that worked from QHA Trailer. You also asked us to conduct independent peer review of the program. That took place in August of 2025. Significant and important findings about the risks of going out to another contractor, but also important confirmation that we were on the right track in terms of our design and in terms of the way we were packaging the program, and most importantly, the successful ongoing construction that even then we saw at the West Portal and has continued and has moved even faster, remaining on time and on budget today. The result of those actions was that in late 2025, QHA Trailer came back to us, as we've said to this board a couple times, asked us, would you consider a different price for this tunnel? And we said, yes, we would. And at that point, we began significant negotiations that sped up in early 2026. We continued to work with the board and committee through early 2026, looking at what some advanced pre-tunnel activities would need to happen to keep the project on schedule. We identified our critical path and talked pretty openly with this board in this room about what that critical path was, because it runs through the tunnel, and completed the design of the tunnel on April 28th, and completed the negotiations necessary to bring this recommendation to you today. So this recommendation is built on a year and a half worth of work. It has been a challenge for staff. It's been a challenge for, I'm sure, all of you as policymakers. It's been a challenge for our contractors, but they've been really productive conversations, and I want to say what I said a minute ago again. The resolve showed by this board, the direction showed by this board has been really impactful and has helped us chart a path forward and has helped us generate the leverage needed to bring to you a price that we are proud to recommend to you. This slide just shows some of the areas in which the committee's been providing oversight to us over the last year and a half. In October of 2025, we reviewed those peer review findings, highlighted the significant risks and opportunities that the peer review presented. In December of 2025, we started to lay out the critical path, the activities that had to take place before the tunnel could start, and then we talked in much more detail about why the tunnel is the critical path for the overall program. If we don't get the tunnel started in time, we're not going to get this project open in time. And several committee members gave us the direct challenge to find a way to get the TBM in the ground by 2028. And the path we suggest today answers that call. Throughout January and February, we talked about risk. Many of you talked to us about finding ways to de-risk the program, and you'll hear from Bob Goodfellow how that analysis is quantified and applied in our recommendation. And you also asked us to find ways to accelerate early works, and we've been doing that throughout this year. Finally, there was a discussion in March about the target price incentive-based model and why that's becoming so prominent in the industry, and Anna Hermlin, our outside counsel, led the committee through that. So all of these areas speak to not just the direction, but also areas of oversight and collaboration and dialogue between staff and board, and again, I'll say that's been very, very valuable to us. And that leads us to this recommendation that, as Carolyn said, tries to strike balance between finding a way to keep us on the critical path, manage those risks, make sure that we don't enter analysis paralysis and lose the incredible momentum we have at the West Portal, but be very honest with ourselves about not exposing VTA to risks of authorizing or giving notice to proceed for work that we can't yet afford until we have the full funding grant agreement, until we complete the rebaselining of our budget, and until we have a better sense of where some of our state funding is as well. So in summary, the scope before you today has changed quite a bit since 2022. In 2022, we thought we were going to have QHA Trailer build everything that's checked off on this list, everything from supportive excavation for the stations, the entire tunnel itself, both portals, laying the tracks in the tunnel. This recommendation narrows that scope to two areas: the remaining pre-tunneling work and the board tunnel, the core things that need to stay on schedule for the program to stay on schedule. And it defers decisions about whether to move forward with the unchecked items until, as Carolyn said, we're in a better position to assess our finances. I'm going to now let Anna Hermlin walk us through a summary of the target price incentive-based model we discussed with the committee.
Thanks very much, Tom. So as discussed at the last board meeting, the Progressive Design Build contract that VTA entered into with KST contemplates an amendment and restatement of that contract upon pricing and terms being agreed for the Stage 2 construction work. And the recommendation before the board is to now do that amendment and restatement, but on the basis of pricing and payment for the Stage 2 work related to those checked boxes that Tom just talked through, being under a target price incentive-based approach. And this is a type of cost reimbursable plus fixed fee payment model. As Tom said, it is increasingly used in the industry. And the intended benefits that this model offers compared to a fixed price model includes avoiding prepaying for risks, particularly the type of low probability but very high cost risks that you see in tunnel construction. And you'll hear more about this in the business case presentation later on. It also offers enhanced cost transparency and greater opportunity for VTA to really be alongside KST and in KST's business, if you like, so that VTA can ensure that costs, schedule, and risks are being properly managed throughout delivery of the project. Another important element is the alignment of VTA and KST's interests, and this is established through a pain share and gain share mechanism, and also a collaborative governance structure that supports best for project decision-making throughout. And finally, as Tom has alluded to, it also offers enhanced flexibility with respect to scope changes and how work is authorized as it progresses. So as presented at the last board meeting, for the Stage 2 work, or the reimbursable work, the compensation under a target price model is broken down into a few different elements. The first, so look at the two blue boxes, relate to costs, and that includes reimbursable direct costs that are invoiced in accordance with federal cost principles. And then in addition, corporate overhead and general and administrative costs that are paid based on audited overhead rates. Profits, which are the purple boxes that you see, are based on a fixed dollar amount, not a percentage basis. And the fee paid on account of profit is broken down into three components. A minimum fixed fee amount that doesn't change regardless of whether there is a cost underrun or overrun. Then there is a portion of the fee that is at risk. That means it's subject to deductions if certain cost, schedule, and key performance indicators are not met. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. Those deductions are what we refer to as pain share. And then the purple box on the right that you see, that is incentives that may be paid as the gain share if there are cost savings or early completion of the project. The terms under the draft amendment and restatement agreement also includes a defined set of non-reimbursable costs. And those are costs and risks that are retained by KST. So for example, this includes costs that are not allowable under federal cost principles or that arise due to gross negligence or willful misconduct. As you all know, there's still some stage 1 work ongoing, including at the West Portal, and that it will still be paid under a lump sum fixed price amount. That's that box at the top that you see. So now to talk a little bit about the fee at risk component. So this is the pain share. So the fee at risk and level of pain share is a core part of the draft amendment and restatement agreement, and VTA's principle driving this has been to align KST and VTA's interests to complete the work on a collaborative basis within the target price and within the target schedule. And it also ensures a retained focus on quality. The mechanism that can result in reductions to the fee at risk, potentially down to 0, is therefore broken into 3 components. The first is cost, and this has proportionate reductions to the fee at risk that represents a percentage share of any cost overrun above a defined threshold. Before I move on to the other 2, I do also want to emphasize that if there is a cost overrun, that minimum fixed fee that I mentioned, because it's a dollar amount, in addition to these reductions due to a cost sharing, KST also doesn't receive any additional profit. So that minimum fixed fee that I spoke about on the slide before also does not increase in the case of a cost overrun. Then schedule, that daily reduction in the fixed fee schedule allocation for each day of delay to identified milestones beyond a defined backstop date. This is equivalent to liquidated damages that you might see in a fixed price contract. And then key performance indicators. This includes an annual assessment of performance against a defined set of performance indicators and a reduction to the fee at risk KPI allocation to the extent those KPIs aren't met. And those KPIs includes retention of key staff, compliance with the cost management and cost control obligations under the contract, and also quality management.
So I think we're going to move on to the next section here, and Sarah Hersom is going to take us through the business case and how we analyzed internally whether and what the best way to move forward was, and how we looked at that in terms of cost, schedule, and risk.
All right, thanks, Tom. So what we're calling a business case is really a sort of a quantitative way that to inform what's a really important decision ahead of us. And there's sort of 2 tracks that we can take here. One is to move forward with KST under an amended and restated agreement, as we're discussing. The other would be to proceed with the off-ramp, as discussed last year, and re-procure the tunnel contract. To do that, we looked at sort of 3 core elements, which is cost, schedule, and risk, because this decision, while there's a lot of focus on cost, as there should be, also needs to consider the programmatic impacts of schedule delay and retained risk by VTA if going down the path of a new contract. I should also mention that this business case really looked at only the areas that are key differentiators between those 2 paths. So areas that are common to both, which would include owner retained risks in either scenario, or project life cycle operating costs were not a key consideration. So we've called these 2 paths option A and option B, which you'll see throughout the presentation. Option A being proceeding forward with an amended and restated agreement with KST. Option B being continuing with the off-ramp and procuring a new tunnel contractor. So the scope of this, aligning with what Tom shared earlier with the scope summary and the green check marks, we're really focusing only on the core tunneling scope, which we generally refer to as both the pre-tunneling works that are not currently authorized, along with the heavy construction associated with the 5-mile excavation of the tunnel. For the cost portion, we looked at both adjustments appropriate within KST's estimate, reflective of this new cost model and risk sharing associated with that, and then also made some of those same adjustments to VTA's internal estimate. The goal here was really to get as close as we could to what we call an apples-to-apples assessment, which was one of the recommendations from the peer review last year that we really took to heart to make sure that we were analyzing this appropriately and coming to the right conclusion. So I know there's been a lot of numbers talked about in reference to this contract and the tunneling work, and wanted to just sort of level set on the right numbers for reference for today's discussion, which in the past we've referred to, some have referred to this as so-called mine and line, which is really just the core excavation of the tunnel. But we also have some select early work packages that are different than those that have been authorized today. So it's not the West Portal, but other pre-tunneling works that were not included in the estimates put together in 2024. So to just kind of level set on that, you'll see a couple costs shown in the graph here. On the left is a pair of estimates reflecting the progression of KST's cost. And on the right is a pair of estimates reflecting the progression of VTA's internal costs. So the blue shows where the numbers were at in 2024, and the green represents where we are at today after all of these adjustments up and down. So 2.9 would be the original benchmark for the KST price proposal for the tunneling work compared to 2.4 today. So it's come down about $500 million, which we'll go through in more detail. Similarly, VTA's internal estimate, the sort of original benchmark we should be referring to is 1.7, which has now increased to 2.1. So to go through sort of the meat of what contributed to this $500 million cost reduction in KST's price, which is really even more, which is significant and is actually even more significant than it sounds, given that their current estimate reflects all the current inflationary pressures that we are experiencing and had to reflect accordingly in our internal estimate. So even with all of that upward cost pressure on labor, equipment, materials, we were still able to bring the cost down $500 million, which is very impressive from our perspective. One of the first areas I just wanted to touch on is the reduction in management costs, and the items on the screen here really represent the areas that had the most discrepancy between KST's previous price proposal and our internal estimate. The management costs were one of those areas. Through the efforts over the past many months, the management costs have come down over 30%, which is very significant and is in part due to a faster tunneling rate, but is also related to a sort of a joint collaboration between our teams looking at which positions were really required and making sure that we're not overpaying for full-time positions for many, many years that are not necessarily required. We had a lot of coordination about the schedule, and that is a source of a lot of the savings here in many different areas. The benefit of this current cost model that we're talking about is that, as mentioned previously, we're not prepaying for contingency and risk that may never be realized. And As it relates to the schedule, that contributed to at least 6 months just off the top. And then in addition to that, there's been a close partnership between staff and KST in looking at other ways that the schedule could be accelerated for the tunneling. We also looked, as I mentioned, in depth at contingency and escalation and other allowances and key assumptions that I'll turn it over to Sarah in a minute to touch on more. The other area of key movement, I would say, is just in the fee itself. And with this revised cost model and a reallocation of the risk sharing comes a proportional adjustment of fee. And so in their previous estimate, what was previously included as builder's fee, other markups and contingencies all comes out and gets replaced with what Anna was describing in the cost model slides previously. So I'm going to turn over to Sarah Wilson just for a minute here to touch on a couple things before I move on.
Thanks, Sarah Hersom. Okay, so I told this a little bit. I talked to the board committee about this. You might be able to imagine that if you're sitting down at a table for a project of this size with members of a party, the other party, right, in this massive contract, that you would be tempted to just say, all right, let's get your schedule contingency out, let's get your cost contingency out, let's go. Like, we got to cut everything out. Okay, that's great. That didn't work when we took that approach. And so for these new discussions, because it's so important to get this agreement correct and to approach it in the right way and to really shift our thinking to a collaborative mode that enables the administration of the contract type that Anna presented, we made sure that the people in the room were the right people in the room. And these are people who are open and not just ready to battle and talk about, well, in my this many years of experience, I've always done it this way and you guys are wrong. And it goes to the basic principle. You can listen to respond, in which case you're just waiting, right, for the other party to be done, or maybe even not waiting for them to be done, which we have had some discussions about, or you're listening to understand. And this group of people consistently has been listening to understand. We are rolling up our sleeves together in the negotiating room. We are not speaking about who's got more experience than whom or who's smarter. It's just a basic assumption that everyone in that room brings exactly the experience and the knowledge that we need. And it's just been so helpful and has really been able to help us shift the conversation, because we are going to be so much more in KST's business than you would normally be in a lump sum contract. And that really required a significant shift, right? And that enabled us to look into detail into their estimate, line by line of, what needs looking at again, how are we going to look at the risk and share the risk differently, and therefore the cost and the schedule are going to look different. So it's just been so important and to approach it a different way and to shift our thinking. And actually we have plans to make sure that everyone on the project team clearly understands, should we move forward, what their mission is and how VTA expects them to carry out their responsibilities to make this as efficient and effective an administration of contract as possible.
Okay, so building on that, and all the good work that was done in listening to understand, it really increased our confidence in the appropriate basis to apply within our own estimate. So as such, we had a number of directed parameters that we applied that contribute to some of the added cost within the internal estimate. That included the revised schedule, some of the craft to staff ratio. We also updated our escalation appropriate to the increase in the base cost. That all contributed to about $400 million in added cost to VTA's internal estimate. That kind of brings us back to where we started with just the summary. So, I think you might look at the conclusion just for this cost portion and think that, you know, a $300 million difference, while very significant, is, you know, the kind of singular basis on which to make a decision about which path to take. And I think what we'd like to go through in the schedule and the risk portions that follow here, that Sarah and Bob will touch on, is that that's not the only thing that should be considered at a programmatic level. So while cost is incredibly important in making some of these decisions about you know, the mechanics within the tunnel contract, at a programmatic level, we also need to consider the cost impacts of delay and the cost impacts of owner retained risks that would come with an owner furnished TBM. So with that, I will hand it off to Sarah.
Great, thank you. So I'll discuss schedule next. We looked over the past few months as we've been having these discussions, we looked at the schedule based on the critical path, going back to that momentum that Tom mentioned. How do we maintain the program's critical path through all of the various contractual tools that we're considering, including this agreement? So tunnel construction is on the critical path. Tunneling is linear. You can't go in the middle typically and go ahead and hurry up. It determines the earliest timing for all of the downstream activities we have on the program, installing systems and testing those systems and going into revenue service. So delaying tunneling does affect the overall program schedule, which is why it's critical for us to be looking at it in more detail and making sure that it keeps moving. So pre-tunneling activities, the launch structure has previously been characterized as an early work package, and we're just clarifying now the pre-tunneling activities, some of which were originally in early work packages. We're just clarifying what exactly needs to be done and progressed before the TBM can go in the ground and start turning to excavate material. So both options A and B that Sarah presented assume that KST is going to construct the lower risk pre-tunneling activities. Lower risk meaning any contractor can do them. It doesn't really cast into place, to use a bad pun, it doesn't really cast into place like the way one contractor does the work. And then there are also pre-tunneling activities that are just not as well suited for a different contractor than the tunnel contractor to prepare them. And so those include specific things that are listed on the next slide as well, so I won't go through them now. And then the other things that we needed to look at in the schedule are remobilization of a new contractor, as well as the resulting downstream schedule delay from each scenario. So you've seen this graphic before. This is our traffic light graphic where we're indicating with green those activities which really have a lower risk for any contractor to do them, or at least any qualified contractor to do them for our tunnel contractor, as well as the benefit to advance based on where we are in the program schedule. The three to highlight are the ones in boxes: initial casting of the precast concrete tunnel liner, the TBM plant installation and testing. This is all of the things that are fueling the machine and feeding the construction operation, as well as the TBM shaft prep and assembly. These items are most appropriate for the contractor who's going to install the tunnel and run the machine to do themselves, for a variety of reasons. It's just so much better if that contractor does those items, and therefore those items need to be paired with whoever does the tunnel. So the schedule on the screen shows option A for the tunnel excavation being conducted by KST, our current BDB contractor. It includes these colors align with the previous slide. So we have the green items are shown here in greens, and the early work package designations are shown there, but we are simplifying those into, they're all pre-tunneling activities, including make a place to store the precast concrete tunnel liner, obtain the items that you need to cast those segments. They actually are very exacting structural elements, held to very high quality standards, procuring the equipment and then doing the power drop so the TBM can run. And then the salmon color, or dusty rose perhaps, does align with the red on the prior slide. That's the initial setup of the plant itself and initial run to make the first 1,000 feet of the precast concrete tunnel liner. In option A, KST can do that in parallel with a number of the other activities. In option B, when we're going through a new procurement, the procurement can proceed in parallel with KST's activities, but the mobilization, the plant setup, and all the customization that has to happen downstream. That's showing a potential schedule impact of 17 to 23 months, or approximately 20 months if we go with a different tunnel contractor. The cost implications of that delay are indicated or estimated here. Previously, we've discussed a monthly cost impact of approximately $30 million. So the 20-month assessment, which is indicated in the red box there, shows a potential impact of over $600 million. There is a range indicated, so our estimated schedule impact for this, our estimated cost impact for this schedule downstream delay is between 400 and 600 million. So for option A, which is authorizing staff to execute the A&R agreement with KST, does obtain a commitment from our PDB contractor for the duration of tunneling, and it allows pre-tunneling work to continue without interruption. As Tom indicated, and maybe as Carolyn indicated as well, you know, it's an initial tranche of funding. It's not the entire thing all at once. It includes a contract which would enable us to keep the work moving and preserve that critical path and preserve the TBM planned launch in 2028 rather than 2029. Option B would delay the schedule by approximately 20 months and cost between 400 and 600 million. So that summarizes the schedule for now, and Bob Goodfellow with Aldea is going to present the independent risk assessment that was conducted.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So we were brought on to answer one very important question, and that is that how does the risk profile change if we move from option A to option B? Proceeding down the same road with option A was our baseline, and we looked at any, after reviewing all the risk registers and the other risk information available, we looked at how that would change up and down if we move to an option B. Next slide. Oh, I get to do it myself. This is great. So this is the meat of our findings. There's a lot of information on this table, so just to take you around the geography of it a little bit. Our top 7 risks that we found the biggest difference in are identified there in the left-hand column, and we did only look at what changed. Again, that's the most important factor here. We looked at probability in terms of a quantitative likelihood on a basis of a 1 through 5 scale, 5 being most likely, 1 being least likely. And then we looked at probabilistic costs for each risk, and the probabilistic analysis is presented in the 2 right-hand columns with a P50 and a P65. The meaning of that is essentially the P50 is the just as likely to be below that cost as above that cost. We like to work in accordance with the recommendations of VTA on a P65, which is a 65% chance that the actual cost is less than that cost. So the top 7 are shown. The largest risk by far was fairly intuitive, so we felt comfortable with the results that the reprocurement and the market uncertainty in the current bidding environment for tunneling work was such that it was subject to substantial upside risk. The next 2 are the retained risks that Sarah discussed for providing a TBM to a new contractor, which is really not the done thing in the tunneling industry, and as well as retaining some design liability for designs done that we need to look at. The next 2 are about interfaces, which are looking at the West Portal and then other interfaces with the other contracts that would still need to be let. The tunneling delay risk is the one that is not the same as delaying the entire slide that Sarah talked about, but ongoing and additional delays in procurement of additional contracts that would need to be let to complete the program. And then we do an unknown risks exercise that just identifies those risks that, or accounts for those risks that we weren't able to identify, as you can't know exactly everything that's always going to happen. You'll note that the numbers don't add up to 400 to 500. That's just a quirk of probabilistic analysis, that when you group things together, it adds differently. But the total risk profile there increased again by $400 to $500 million. That was our finding. So with option A, you really have the same risk profile. It's the baseline. We have the same people involved. We have a familiarity with those people, and most importantly, maintains that project momentum. Option B would shift significant risk from the contractor realm to the owner realm, and we would be looking at higher likelihood of delays and disruption down the road with the additional administrative activities that we would need to do with those procurements. And the big nut, of course, is that market uncertainty of a rebid tunnel contract.
Okay. And so just to summarize this business case analysis, if you take nothing else away from all the experts' feedback here, it's remember when Sarah Hersom first put up those slides with the 2.4 versus the 2.1, all of us, including me when I first saw these numbers, as they were emerging over the last few months, one is tempted to look at the 2.1 and conclude perhaps we can go back out to the market and get that price. But the analysis has clearly shown that we will not get that price if we go out to market. We're going to pay a higher premium in terms of schedule that'll have downstream effects of the whole program and make it harder for us to get this system open for the people of Santa Clara County. And we'll be courting a significant amount of risk that will likely drive the price north of $3 billion. And so all that analytics boils down to the fact that we believe that net, the most cost-effective way to move forward with the program is with the option and the recommendation that's being proposed today. I'm just going to give another maybe 2 minutes or less of notes about the path forwards, because I know you have a lot of questions about this. First, I want to state that the recommendation here has several parts. First, it restates the contract to the target price incentive-based model, which Anna described. Second, it reduces the scope to focus only on the critical path things that need to keep moving forward, which is the tunnel itself. And third, it limits that authorization even further so that staff is not going to toss the keys to KST and ask them to build a $2 billion tunnel. We're limiting it to the pre-tunneling activities necessary to complete this year to keep us on schedule. The expenditures are capped by the features of the contract. The cost will be much more transparent, and VTA will have the opportunity to stop this work at any time should unforeseen conditions occur. And just in terms of overall schedule, that's the window. This gets us from the summer of 26 to the summer of 27, when we'll know a lot more about everything from program cost to federal funding. Why just 1 year of tunneling? Well, it's pretty much for the reasons I described. We don't have the FFGA. We don't have the federal money flowing to us now. We know it's coming, but we don't know when. We are in the middle of rebaselining the project, and so that rip down to the studs and rebuild our cost estimate for everything, not just the tunnel, is going to be the next important data point, and that's going to drive our perspective on how fast to drive forward. Right now, we just want to fund the critical path, and we want to use as much state and regional funding as possible to protect the sales tax and protect VTA, to minimize the exposure that VTA is under. Here's a quick pass through what that money looks like. Got $100 million allocated from the CTC in March. We are authorized on the consent calendar today. You approved us to go seek $192 million of the Regional Measure 3, the bridge toll money from 2018 that we all fought for so hard years ago. And we're continuing to talk to the state about TIRSIP and the other state funding sources, making those liquid again to keep the pressure off the sales tax. The current contract value right now is $1 billion. That's what we've authorized KST to do, and that has bought us a TBM, it's bought us a launch structure, it's bought us all kinds of early works construction, and it's bought 100% tunnel design that we are ready to go build. The action today takes that $1 billion and modifies it as follows. It increases the overall value of the contract by the target price, which is the $2.4 billion, though there's a specific gate on that, which is that money cannot be spent with KST now. Only $400 million that can be spent right now. It also closes out a couple of important loose ends from stage one. It's $10 million of additional design that we had to authorize to move the early works packages forward, $12.5 million to close out some other items, and it results in a new contract value of $3.5 billion. There's the recommendation on the screen, and we look forward to your questions.
All right. Well, thank you for the extensive staff presentation. Are we going, I believe we'll go to public comment first. Is that right, Elaine? Okay, thank you. We have one card in person, so we'll start with Matt Scott.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm the project executive for KST. And I just want to show my support for the continued mobility that VTA plans to provide to bring BART to Silicon Valley. KST is very proud of the work that we've completed with our partnership with VTA and at the West Portal that we've done to date. We're especially proud of our partnership with labor and the hundreds of craftsmen and women who come to the job site every day and work safely and provide a quality product for the benefit of the public. We look forward to working with you in the future. I believe this contract model, when we're successful, will ultimately serve as a model for the industry, and it will be the normal way of delivering these kinds of complex infrastructure projects throughout the country for years to come. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the one online.
Yes, we have one online. Roland, go ahead, please, and begin speaking.
Thank you, Chair. So once again, the elephant is in the house is slide 7. So supposedly we're getting a $500 million discount here. But why aren't we waiting until we find out how much all the unchecked boxes on slide 7 are going to cost? What if they amount to $1.5 billion, which is quite potentially where they're going to go? And then what? The next question, okay, so this presentation did not address any of what was discussed at the Oversight Committee, including, the Plan B with the minimum operating segment. How can we possibly pre-award $400 million when the $375 million in RMP haven't been approved by MTC? And and that concludes my remarks on that. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving back to the board. Who would like to kick off with questions or comments? We'll go to Director Weinberg.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for the presentation and for the work that has been done to date. I know that this was a half-hour presentation, which is long for us, but it represents an enormous amount of work. My first question has to do kind of with the structure of what we're being asked to do. So there's an amendment and restatement that's in the 10 digits in terms of funds, but we're only actually being asked to approve only 9 digits worth of funds. Why are we doing those two things? Is it that the 400,000 is a component of the larger, so we can't do the 400 by itself?
The 400 million is a subset of the 2.4. That's correct. It's important for us to lock in a target price at current dollars now that we've negotiated it. We don't want to wait 6 months, 9 months, 2 years to try to reset that price. So that's the importance of setting the target price down and restating the contract. The 400 million, like I said, is a subset of the 2.4.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have the 400 million ready to be paid? I mean, the money is there, or it's going to be there so that KST is going to be paid on time if we approve this?
We do have the financial plan ready to spend that money. That's correct.
All right.
It does depend on some of those state funds as well as local funds.
Okay. I paid closest attention to the part of the presentation where there was a discussion of the negotiations, and I was very happy to hear that, and I appreciate Mr. Scott's comments as well. I have to say, as a board member who hasn't been intimately involved with the Oversight Committee, it's felt like there has been an antagonistic relationship, and maybe that was true of the past, maybe it wasn't, maybe I was misinformed or misunderstood, but I'm very happy to hear that we're moving toward a more collaborative grouping. Nevertheless, while a delta of $300 million is much better than the $1.2 billion that we had before, $300 million is an enormous amount of money. And something that I observed at our last board meeting is that when we're talking about this project, it's almost like monopoly money because the numbers are so big. $300 million is an incredible amount of money. And I understand that the business cases that's been presented to us, but nevertheless, how are we going to bridge that? Or is kind of the unstated understanding, well, the VTA is probably going to have to eat that, but it's going to be cheaper to do that than look at another route forward?
I'll start and maybe ask Sarah to help too. I think the last thing you said, it's cheaper than any other path forward is definitely true. And that's the key conclusion of the business case. The question about the impact of this on the overall program cost, I want to be very upfront that there are a series of pressures that are pushing up and down on the overall program cost. Inflation is pushing up. That $300 million difference is pushing up. The significant work we did on value engineering and cost savings throughout the year 2025 is pushing down. And when I talked about doing a rebaseline, we've basically ripped our overall program cost estimate down to the studs, and we're building it back up to see where all those puts and takes come out. So I'm not sure if that means we eat it or we just acknowledge that that's what the cost is going to be, and continue to work on the cost savings elsewhere to make sure we have a viable project.
Okay, I think what I heard was we're aware that this is a problem, and worst case scenario, if KST is right, then so be it, and it's going to be more expensive than what we internally thought it's going to be.
I think the internal cost estimate going up does mean that part of the program is going to be more expensive than we thought it was going to be. And like I said, we've done all this cost saving work to save money elsewhere, and we're working on how that nets out overall. But the tunnel is going to be more expensive than we thought it was going to be 4 years ago.
Okay. And then my last question is kind of a more bigger picture, how it all sort of works together. I think at our last meeting, we approved a contract for the new program manager, who's the old program manager, project manager. How does the project manager fit into this? And what role do they play in getting to the recommendation that you're making today? And how does it all play out?
So the program manager is our primary staff in terms of project controls, but they have also brought in quite a few independent voices. Bob's a good example of that. Somebody who does not work day to day in the project, but has come in for special assignments like this. So the program manager has been our backbone analytically. We have also stress tested their analysis with other folks. Bechtel, our construction manager, independent experts like Sarah on our own staff have had a look at this as well. So it's a VTA recommendation, not strictly a PMT recommendation that you have before you.
Okay. Moving forward, I would be interested, we're paying them an awful lot of money, and I would be interested in knowing what input they had, what their thoughts were as well. And that just as we move forward with this, assuming we're moving forward with it. My last question is, has the VTA ever used the contract model that you're proposing now before? And if so, what have our experiences been?
We have not used this model before, and that's why we've been talking to clients and big infrastructure owners all over North America about their experience. Their experience has been good, and we are trying to build an organization that mirrors what's been successful in Toronto and Vancouver and other places where the model's been used.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for those thoughtful questions. We'll go to Director Turner.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that, and thanks for the presentation. I do have a couple of questions. One of the items or comments you made was to do with the FFGA. Obviously, we're counting on that at some point to come in. Do we know when, and is there a guarantee, first off?
So the current roadmap we have published by the FTA shows us submitting that application in 2027 and shows approximately a 6-month review time. I think it's prudent for us to think that it might be hard to meet that schedule. That's the timing.
But we're confident we'll get that money.
We're confident we have a project that will get that money, but when we get the money is very important, and that's why the approach today does not require having the FFGA funds in pocket to spend that $400 million. We're being very prudent about that.
Right, okay. Do we have a contingency plan if we don't get the FFGA?
Yes, we've committed both at the Oversight Committee and to this board, we've committed to continuing to develop our adaptive plan, which would give us opportunities to make sure we have a meaningful project for a whole range of costs, even all the way down to no federal money whatsoever. So we'll continue to develop that, and that will be shared with the board throughout the summer.
And if by chance we don't get that federal money, does that create a delay in the timeline? In other words, work being done. Could that cause a delay, and if it's KST or whoever else?
It could cause a delay if that is pushed further out, but we are talking with our funders at the state level about potentially getting more access to state money sooner so that we can keep on the critical path and get that TBM in the ground. And those conversations will play out over the next year, and we'll keep the board informed, because that will really just drive our decision about when to take the next step after today's.
Okay, very good. I would assume that if I also saw this right, there was something about nearly 84 months, 7 years ahead of us on this project. Is that correct? How much more time are we looking at?
For the whole program. Yeah, we anticipate between 3 and 4 years of tunneling. You're right that there are then follow-on activities in the schedule, you know, the completion of other items, stations, installation of track work on the interior concrete that will need to go in the tunnel, tie into BART. Yes, that's revenue. We're forecasting revenue service, actually more than that away, right, in 2037.
Yeah. We have an anticipated overall cost on the project, is that correct? Somewhere around 13 billion?
Currently 12.7, and we're working to rebaseline that right now.
Okay. Over 7 years, are we able to guarantee costs at the 13 billion, or are there going to be inflationary factors that we're going to have to factor in, and then in 5 years go back to the public and say, hey, actually we're now at 15 billion or something to that effect? You can understand the concern that I'm sure many of us have right now with more critical eyes on this project, and we've all got to take, I think, a little bit more of a tougher stance on these growing costs. We cannot allow this to continue.
I definitely hear that. One of the features of this contract is that escalation is baked into the target price. And so, you know, we've started to take the lesson that escalation is even worse than most of us are used to throughout our careers. And as this contract and potentially future contracts are going to have that kind of insurance may not be the right word, but reality check built into the contract so that we're not underestimating what things are going to cost and then paying more later. The overall program cost is going to, like I said, reflect the tension between all the money we've saved and all the inflation we're experiencing.
Okay. Yeah, I think as a board, we'll be probably, you know, again, much more critical about what those costs are looking like as we go forward. Just, I think, for a heads up for you. And again, we had a conversation earlier about KST and the negotiated information and what we're going to be looking at approving here as far as 12 versus 34 million. I do think, again, my personal feelings are much like my colleague Weinberg, when I first came into this, it did seem like there was a bit of a contentious relationship between VTA and KST, which is why one of the things we began to consider was an off-ramp opportunity. Maybe it was more to do with costs. So I was reassured this morning that there really isn't a contentious relationship, but I do sense that amongst the board, we're probably going to be a little bit more critical of things that we're going to have to negotiate regarding additional costs, much like this $12 million. And I think our request of you, and I think staff will be having access to their books, if I heard that right earlier. I think our ask is that there is you know, a critical eye on those costs at KST so that we're not facing this ongoing negotiation. And we get why those do occur. It was very well explained, so I appreciate that. But I think we have to be much more critical about the additional costs and how those come about. And I think VTA staff staying deeply involved with those, you know, in those conversations and in their books will reassure the board that we're not going to be in a position again where we're renegotiating 12, 20, 30 million additional dollars.
Yes, thank you. This contract does provide for a number of processes and groups who have responsibility to review costs and forecasted costs on a regular basis. Some of them are monthly, some of them are quarterly. Things come up, we need to be notified. So we will absolutely be reviewing that, providing updates to you, and we'll have a sense for where we are going forward.
Very good. Thank you. I'm good, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Director. Appreciate it. Okay, let's come back to this side of the room. I'll go ahead and move this way. We'll start with Director Foley.
Thank you for the presentation and the explanation as to the new amended contract and what you're looking for from us today. So just to be clear, you're asking us to approve the amendment, which is the total amount of the Phase 2. but only to distribute or release 400 million. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah, 400 million only.
And so will you come back to us to ask for additional funding allocation or releasing of funds on a regular basis?
So that's right.
The
And
plan.
My hope is that every time we come back, we'll have a little more clarity about everything from overall program cost to the timing of the FFGA, and of course, we'll be able to talk about how things are performing so far. But yes, there'll be multiple asks coming back, yes.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Can I just clarify one quick? What the 2.4 is it sets the target price in the contract. So that doesn't change, correct?
Unless we change the scope of the contract, unless
Right.
there's
So that's the
what's
other
called an
thing it
adjustment
does.
event
It
to the
sets the
contract.
target price that we have.
Right, I understand that, but as the scope may change, those costs may change too, right? I mean, we're not here, that's not what we're authorizing right now. We're authorizing the target price incentive-based model up to 2.4 million and releasing 400, authorizing the release of 400,000, or 400 million. Big numbers.
That is right.
Okay.
And it's for a specific scope. So
Right.
Well, I guess I never want to say the scope would change. The tunnel's 100% designed, and so we basically know what we're getting for that target price at this point.
Okay, thank you. I want to appreciate the comments that my colleagues have already made. This is my last director's meeting, so my last time that I get to comment on this. I was around when we were negotiating or deciding to really create the off-ramp with KST and the reason for that. So I'm curious, Sarah, you mentioned that there's a different tenor amongst the negotiators. What happened? We lost a year and a half in this negotiation, and we know how expensive that has been. So why did they come back to the table, to be really frank?
Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts on this, but we have very limited time, so trying to pick the best ones. The first thing I'll say is that we've been able to use the time to really truly do PDB, Progressive Design Build, which is the contract that we have in place. Through the mismatch in the estimates, KST was able to educate us as to some of the things that we were requiring, which were impacting their cost and driving it up. And so we also revisited a number of our technical requirements in addition to having these new and actually collaborative discussions related to cost and schedule and contract structure, brought in outside counsel who then informed us about, or provided us with updates. We have a bunch of staff on both sides who have experience with cost reimbursable model, but we learned and were able to reshape the contract, and we'll use that even if even if we had to off-ramp KST, we still learned things that would drive the cost downward. So it was actually quite beneficial to have that time. It did mean that they had to make more cuts in their cost to, help battle that escalation that's been continuing and will continue every moment, right? They came back to the table. They want to do the work. It's an amazing project. They have a lot invested in, their people have moved here and live here and have created this tunnel boring machine, which is custom. It's built for our project. They want to be able to use it and operate it, and they have a reputation to uphold, and they really want to, give us a good project.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that information and that background.
Mm-hmm.
And the quality or the changes they suggested didn't affect the quality of the construction or the safety of the project or anything like that.
Right, no, absolutely not.
Okay, these were things that they mentioned and said, why are you doing this? You really don't need to. And we said, oh, you're absolutely right. This is
Right.
over-engineered or whatever
Right.
their word, not to get really technical.
Yeah,
'cause-
it's like 3 extra inches of wiggle room when they're approaching a station. That's
Right.
not gonna, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I'm actually pleased that KST was back at the table and you're having a positive relationship with them. And thank you, Mr. Scott, for coming to comment to us and in support of the project and moving forward with us. I, like Director Turner are very concerned about the cost, the total cost of the project. And while we're here just to talk about the KST phase, there is an overall, over our heads is that cost of $12.7 billion that we haven't reached the funding model yet. So I'm really concerned about how we're going to reach that 12.7 million. That may continue to increase. And when will the Oversight Board see the funding mechanisms and design changes and anything else, the Plan B that really needs to be thought of very carefully and in my mind, sooner than later, so that then the board can react and not just continually move the authorizations forward without being able to back down? Because I'm concerned the board will be at a go, no-go point, and they only will be able to go forward when they haven't yet had enough information to get to analyze what a Plan B is. So I just want to encourage you to, with the Oversight Board, to bring in the design recommendation changes sooner than later and the funding status sooner than later. We've talked about a lot of things on ways to save money and change the design, and we don't see them here at the director level. I'm hoping the Oversight Board is seeing them, but we really need to have a better understanding of how are we going to get those total funds, because when you talk about the FFTA, they're not really that certain anymore. And that's a huge, huge consideration. So I will just leave it at that. I will continue to be watching this, even though I won't be sitting up here making any of the decisions. And I think you're on the right track with this new amendment to the contract. Chair, would you like me to make a motion or wait for further discussion?
It's your decision.
Okay.
You can.
I will move approval of item 8.1.
Is there a second?
A second. Let me go
Okay.
now.
All right.
Thanks.
Let's,
That's it for me.
thank you, Director Foley. Let's continue on with questions and comments. Let's go to Director Jane.
Yeah, I'm a little confused about the contracting models. You know, lump sum is you go bid it out, people give you a price, and you take the low bidder, presumably, and then they have to commit to that price. That price is actually not set in stone because there can be issues that come up that are sort of beyond their control, and that price goes up. And I get that, and then, you know, we don't really have visibility into their actual costs because they have a lump sum unless there's a disagreement. We entered into a PDB with KST, and the idea with the PDB is you don't really have a price. You actually update your cost models weekly or monthly, and because you don't know what the project is going to be, you're starting to design it, and you don't really, you select the contractor based on their qualifications, not based on really a price, even though they have a rough price. We had our internal cost estimates of 1.7 billion. KST eventually came out at 2.8 billion. So you kind of have some idea of price, but there isn't really a price, and it relies on, as Sarah said, Sarah Wilson, our being in their business. We have to be able to be in their books with PDB, and we have to be able to validate what their actual costs are, because otherwise you don't even know what the project is when you start. With target price, we're in their business, but it seems like target price is almost like a bidding situation where you go out to the market, people bid with a target price, and you sort of select based on a target price, and you're in their business looking at their actual costs. But here we're not in that situation. We're basically giving the contract to KST, so it's not a bidding situation. And our target price was very different than KST's target price under PDB. So I'm a little confused about the contracting models, and then I want to go to slide 7. Scope was all of these check marks on the left. And we basically granted all of that to KST under PDB. And so what was our internal cost estimate for that CP2?
So so let me take a step back and try to answer both your questions as quickly as I can. The PDB contract we signed in 2022, this was the scope of it, but Progressive Design Build, as you said, is a contract where you have a stage of cooperation and exploration of scope and stages, and the thinking was that when packages were ready to move to stage 2, like we're proposing to do today, there would be a final reconciliation of the price and hopefully an agreement and a movement forward. The only scope item that reached the point where we were making that sort of go, no-go decision is the scope that was being discussed today. We reached that point in early 2025 and concluded we're heading towards an impasse and started the off-ramp process, and then through all the actions we described today, managed to get back to the table and found a way forward with that. But the remainder of these things did not reach the point where we had those two apples to apples cost estimates and to compare them. And that is kind of the feature of Progressive Design Build.
I get that, but we have to put a number in the FFGA.
Right.
What number did we put in the FFGA for CP2?
Those numbers are baked into the $12.7 billion cost estimate that was submitted in the New Start application in 2024. And I'm actually being a little cagey about this because there is still the possibility under this contract to either award those to KST or take those back out to market, and a line-by-line disclosure would probably not be a good idea. But I would maybe work with the general counsel to provide that information confidentially to board members.
Okay, can we move to slide 15 now? So the original KST, if you look at the leftmost bar, was 2.9 billion. But here it says includes early works packages. And now we've gone to the 2026 KST price of 2.4 billion, and I don't see that item in there. So if early works package is stage 1, which is 1 billion, and stage 2 is 2.4 billion, that bar should actually be at $3.547 billion. So their price actually went up from 2.9 to 3.547 billion. I mean, it's not an apples to apples comparison.
So maybe I'll restate it in a different way. The numbers reflected on the screen, none of them include the work that's already been authorized, which is the $1.08 billion. So if you were to apply that, you would add $1 billion to every single bar on the screen. So what we're trying to distill for the purposes of targeted discussion is only the go-forward work, I will call it, and every bar shown includes the same amount of early work packages which have not been authorized. So additional pre-tunneling work that's needed before actually launching the machine.
So that all of these bars should say includes early work packages.
Correct.
I see, okay.
I think we were mostly concerned that the numbers that had been discussed previously in blue, making sure that, okay, instead of talking about a 2.8 or a 1.4 or 1.6 or whatnot, this is what we should center on for today. But they all include early work packages. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so our original price that we put into the FFGA was 1.7 billion, including early works packages, but we need to add $1 billion onto that?
It's a little bit hard to talk about it in that way because what we put into the FFGA was not, we did not include this type of breakout. We included the full cost of all work for this project, but it actually predated some of these discussions about splitting out the scope in this manner. So I don't think there was anything in the FFGA that we can exactly pull out and say this was the equivalent scope. We could do that exercise, and we have some of that, but it's not quite as simple, I think, as
I see.
what you're describing.
Can we move on to slide 23, please? So here on the upper option A, you show these items like early works package 11C goes almost all the way to where the pink part is, right? And the pink part is PCTL plant setup, initial run, shaft prep, and TBM assembly. Are those linear items? Can't you do the TBM assembly while you're setting up the PCTL plant?
If KST does the work, yes. So that's the
But
schedule
KST
that's
is doing
shown.
the work. I mean,
Right, so the schedule, the kind of the option A
The-
schedule that's on top, it shows that
But
those
the-
parallel activities like you're describing.
But the option B plant one, is the PCTL plant that whole, say, 17 months? Or is that a linear thing, and can we actually shorten it on the lower graph by doing the TBM assembly, shaft prep in parallel with the PCTL plant?
Yeah, I think Director Jane, you're asking whether the items in the pink bar, is that a linear sequence?
That's right.
Or is, there is a lot more, we did not want to overwhelm the board with too much detail, but that breaks out into hundreds of activities that run.
I just want to know where the long poles are.
Yeah.
I mean, this should be driven by the long poles. It should just be what the key items are.
Yeah, TBM assembly, it's a roll-up item, as Tom is saying. It's a roll-up item that comprises a bunch of lower items.
Okay. All right.
All of those things, though, are in the same category because they are appropriate for the tunneling contractor to do. So the TBM assembly is not just like stick 3 pieces together and start it up. It's very complex. And so the contractor operating it needs to do it so they know where everything is so that they can maintain everything properly.
Okay. It says that this contract, the path forward, does not obligate VTA to select KST, but I think what Director Foley was saying is we're basically approving the 2.4 billion. I mean, right now, we're approving 400 million, but we're actually authorizing to go up to the 2.4 billion, which adds up to a total. I think what we're authorizing is up to 3.547 billion. So in my calculation of this, our original ICE with early works packages was 1.7 billion. Now we're looking at 3.54 billion. That's a delta of 1.8 billion. That would make this project $14.5 billion.
Right, so maybe if we go to slide 36, I can explain maybe the right way to think about numbers like that. And I know we're pressed for time here, but
We're always pressed for time. For a $14 billion project, we're always pressed for time.
so the current contract value of $1.1 billion includes all the TBM, all early works, the design of the tunnel, and all work done to date. It includes the early works. The 2.4 is the additional work. It's the green bar in the cost estimates that Sarah Hurston walked us through in detail. And then the modifications is a small item for a total value of 3.5. So the number that I would compare apples to apples, Director Jane, with the 1.7 is that 2.4 line.
Okay.
And then as far as the not authorizing the tunnel, the $400 million establishes what the contract calls the maximum funding curve. So the money's not, any funds above that are not accessible to KST or authorized to move forward.
So according to that, we're 700 million short from our original FFGA. And with the FFGA, when we didn't get all the money from the feds, we were 1.2 billion short there. So then we went through this whole cost reduction exercise, which basically just renegotiated some safety and designs with BART. That was 187 million. And then we have the 2 parking structures that we eliminated. That was probably like 300 million. So we're still short. And I don't know how we're going to pay for this. I don't see how we have an FFGA.
So we intend to bring a rebaseline project budget to this board to explain all the upward and downward cost pressures, the schedule benefits we gain, the release of contingency, the additional cost related by this, and show that net with the board over the next few months.
Thank you.
Thanks, Director Jane. Let's go to Director Sell.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. I wanted to just go back to slide 15. So the big picture is that, so the big picture is KST is whatever you do is going to promise to stay below 2.4 billion. Is that we will do whatever it takes to stay below that 2.4 billion?
I think it's safer to say that KST, all the financial incentives that will either reward or punish KST require them to stay within the 2.4 billion. But it is not a lump sum contract. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's say something goes like unexpectedly, something happens, then will you and KST work really hard to try to reduce costs in other areas and whatever to bring it down? Because you went up in a certain area and you got to bring it, some of things got to not, there's an envelope and you will kind of, like right now, this bar graph shows that your estimate is that VTA thinks it's going to be 2.1 billion. KST thinks it's going to be 2.4 billion. So there seems like there's some wiggle room there if costs go up than VTA had expected. Is that kind of like, that's why you're okay with this, because your estimate internally is 2.1 billion, their estimate is 2.4, so those are kind of falling in line, but you will do whatever it takes to stay within that envelope. It won't expand much more than that. That's just my point.
Yeah, great question. The contract is set up with incentives, as Tom was alluding to, whereby if KST comes in under a certain value, they get their at-risk fee associated with the cost. So they are incentivized financially both in that way and also in their KPIs to participate with us in a number of cost monitoring ways. They have to submit a cost management model to VTA for approval at the beginning of the job. We will have a maximum funding curve, which lays out what dollars they can spend so that they know they can't possibly spend more than that. VTA won't have the money to pay them. A procurement plan and a resource breakdown, which is a staffing plan, right? So we pre-agree on a bunch of stuff and a bunch of ways that they're going to run the work. And then we have groups like our cost management working group, which will be meeting regularly to oversee costs. And we've already started talking to them about potential small ways we can save costs. We're never going to stop with cost savings mode. We're always going to be in cost savings mode. The 2.4 is not an absolute maximum in the contract, but the contract has a number of structures built in that incentivize both parties to work together to keep costs low.
Okay, so it's sort of like profit sharing. They do a really good job, then they'll stay ahead of the curve, and maybe they'll get some incentive to like save money, and that's kind of like that in a simplified language.
Yeah. Okay. We call it pain share, gain share, but yeah, it gets some upside, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for your work. Keep going.
Thanks, Director Sell. Appreciate that. Just a time check for folks. I don't want to rush anybody, but we currently have about 11 minutes left until we may lose quorum, so I want to keep things moving along, but I'm going to Director Abe-Koga next.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you so much for the incredible work that you all have put into this. Being on the Oversight Committee, I've been able to see some of that, and I think there has been a lot of work done. Most of my questions were answered, and I did second this motion. I just wanted to reconfirm. I think with my colleagues, I share the concern of just the overall cost and trying to understand. So we were at that $700 million gap from the FFGA grant. Does this add? This adds to that gap now, or is this included in that gap at this point?
Yeah, I would say this is, again, there's things pushing up and pushing down. This is a thing pushing up.
Okay.
But we're coming back with a full accounting of where we are with that gap shortly.
So the work to continue to find ways to cut costs is going to
like Sarah said, that never stops. Yeah.
And it sounds like there might be some more promise with collaboration and finding. And I did see how you were doing that with a different presentation you were in, so it's gave me a better understanding of how this works. And then the one thing was, I'm assuming, or wanted to confirm in your decision, your recommendation, I remember at some point hearing about the customized boring machine and only maybe three operators are out there in the world that can actually use this machine the way it's been built. Was that the case?
The individual operator, they're very, they are few and far between. We have accounted for some cost differential in the salary for that person because it's very important. It's also, there's a whole instrumentation and monitoring program. There will be a daily meeting. So there's lots of ways where we make sure that they, even if they say they know how to do their job, we make sure they know how to do their job, and KST is responsible for hiring knowledgeable people. As far as skilled contractors that would qualify, that have representative experience that we would consider, yeah, that's also a small number, yeah.
I was just wondering if that was part of the consideration in rebidding, if
Oh,
that...
absolutely, yes.
Right.
KST has world-class people assigned to this project, subject matter experts confirmed by our technical advisory panel, which has overseen the entire duration of design and construction of the tunnel boring machine, and VTA's experts, including some folks on the PMT who I've told them they're never retiring. Yeah, we have great talent here.
Great. Yeah, my biggest interest is that we keep this project moving, and I had hoped if we did look at rebidding, we would see significant costs, like in the billions, but that's not coming to fruition. And I feel, time is money. I keep saying that, and so if this is the way to continue without or to diminish as much as possible delays or stoppages, I think this is the way to go. So I'm happy to move forward with. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Abekoga. I think that's a nice summary. I do believe we have a couple of hands still up. I'm going to go to Director Mulcahy, who hasn't asked any questions yet.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Just a couple of things. Stepped into this role, when we were sort of going to that offloading conversation with KST, and just want to recognize the work that you've done since that time to really help the subcommittee get us educated, keep us educated. I know that when we come to this board, though, that there always seems to be a bit of tension around how much time we have to sort of talk about this, really important project. And just noting a couple of things you've talked about, Tom. One is the adaptive plan, I think is also called Plan B. I think it'd be good to articulate, not just to the subcommittee, but also to the board, sort of where that fits on the schedule and when they can actually expect that. And then the other is just schedule generally, not the schedule of the project, but milestones you hope to have and bringing to this board, and then making sure that, the meetings of this board, have the space to have those conversations. So I'll be supporting the motion on the floor, and just want to acknowledge the great work and make note of those two important items moving forward. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Director. Let's go to Director. Has anyone, okay, Director Jane, go back.
Yeah, to me, we're basically locked into KST. We were locked in, according to what I'm hearing from staff, when we ordered the TBM. Everyone's now saying, oh, you can't have anybody else operate. Then we did this sounding. We went out and talked to 10 other contractors, and we only offered them a fixed price lump sum option. We didn't offer them a target price. No one wants to do a fixed, with something that, with this much uncertainty, no one's going to do a fixed price contract. So we didn't get really any serious bites on somebody else operating this. And then now we heard from Nasri that, if you have somebody do the piece, first, KST is doing the launch structure. So then we hear, oh, for all these early works, you have to have KST do this because they're going to step on each other, the contractors. So it's better if you just have KST do all these early works. And then I'm hearing, well, now if you do the PCTL from Nasri, you have to have KST do the tunneling because of the handoff of the liners and the tunnel boring machine. So we're basically locked in to KST for the whole original CP2, which is not the way you do bidding. It's not the way you force them to sharpen their pencils and give you the best price. But we're locked into this.
Would you like,
Annika,
maybe
just
I
a
can
brief comment
brief.
on the sounding? Yeah, really brief.
So just to briefly comment on the market sounding, when we went out to the market to ask for input, It wasn't that we laid out the only option is fixed price. Would you be interested? It was really an exercise in, for this scope of work, what would you consider? And we talked about risks, we talked about different contract terms, we talked about what might be important. We were very careful not to lock in to, we just want your views on one particular delivery model. The messages that we heard back was all around the risk around the TBM, so that there would need to be a higher risk retention by VTA, which is understandable. Also given the progress of design, where that design responsibility, but also that in the current market, looking for different ways and innovative approaches to risk. Whatever the model, the contract terms would need to reflect an innovative approach to risk share. That was the common message that we heard from all of them.
But the thing about it is we off-ramped them at KST because we thought that there were viable bidders out there, but there weren't.
We initiated the off-ramp. KST asked if they'd give us a lower price. We've been negotiating and analyzing that price for several months. And what we're saying to you now is that there are options to off-ramp. Those risks have prices. We could pay those prices if we got a better price from another contractor. But now we're saying that we don't see the opportunity to get that price, and we do see the price movement from KST. At this point, the lines have crossed, and this is the most cost-effective way forward. That's our recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Director. We are close to time, so I will just say I want to thank VTA staff and our outside counsel and consultants for all of the work. I appreciate KST hanging in at the table and continuing to work with our staff to get to a price that and a structure really that allows us to move forward. I think what's most innovative and important about this approach is that we have a target price that has a shared pain, shared gain, whatever you called it, an incentive-based structure that better aligns incentives between the agency and our lead contractor. And I think that it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. I'm hopeful. I think it could be a model for other mega projects around the country, if not the world. I think the board asked a lot of great questions today. We had a number of tough questions at the Oversight Committee. We're all very sensitive to the ever-escalating cost of this project. We're not alone in that. I lived in Boston through just a small portion of the Big Dig project, and saw firsthand the challenges of delivering very large projects, particularly as funding is uncertain and comes in these unpredictable tranches. I think Director Turner made a very important point that I've often made on the Oversight Committee, which is we need to have confidence if we're putting hundreds of millions and ultimately billions of dollars of state and local dollars at risk, that we're going to be able to deliver something of value even if the federal government does not come through. Because while we are confident that we are a high-scoring project and legally entitled and all the rest, the level of unpredictability from the federal government is such that we have to be able to know that there is that alternative approach, which is something we're going to spend more time talking about in the coming months, so that there is something of value delivered with state and local dollars that we're putting at risk. What would be unacceptable is building half of a tunnel and having spent the money but have nothing to show for it, no value. On the other hand, waiting to have all of the funding perfectly buttoned up and going out and rebidding and getting the perfect process around this risk, what I think has been the greatest threat to this project from day one, which has been an extremely slow process that runs up professional services costs and a bunch of soft costs versus the cost that we ultimately need to bear, which is the actual construction of this thing and getting the actual project built. So I'm glad to be moving forward with dollars that keep the physical work out on the ground happening and steadily moving us forward and addressing what is currently in the critical path. It does not answer all of the big questions, concerns, and risks, but I appreciate that staff is managing those. And again, since we are at time, I think the questions were asked, so I won't belabor it, but I would like to call for the roll call.
Thank you,
Through the chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Supervisor,
just-
Director,
I'll
go
keep it-
go
I'll
ahead.
keep it
I just
rather
want to make sure we
short.
don't lose quorum, but go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. I know I've been listening to my colleagues and have had similar questions in terms of the cost and trying to figure out, outweigh the benefits and the costs here of our decision that we're going to make, or we're going to hope to make today. Last June, we voted on initiating an off-ramp with KSD for this stage 2, and now we find ourselves with kind of the best offer in terms of what the staff is providing to us, right? I always feel, I want to always trust the professionals, the people who live and breathe this more than I do. And I certainly think that you've made the best efforts in terms of where you can get us for cost. I think what you're hearing, and maybe I'll just speak for myself and not for the rest of my colleagues, but it is a very important decision to make, and this is a lot of money. And so to have a very time-certain conversation feels very pressured. And so I wanted to offer an opportunity for us to continue the discussion so that the board can feel more comfortable with the conversation, or at least get some of the information that they've asked that hasn't been presented. I just think that it is not the best way to make a decision when we have time constraints. People need to leave, people need to go. This is billions of dollars that we're making a decision on. And so anyways, I wanted to put that out there in terms of, I don't know if we need to make a decision
Can
today.
I just ask, we still have 15 minutes. Do we have additional questions? I didn't see any other hands, but if we have additional questions, let's make sure we get them out there.
Well, I don't think it's just in 15 minutes, Vice Chair, that in 15 minutes you're going to allow for a board to feel comfortable, especially those who are not part of the oversight committee. We may follow some of the conversations that, and some of the same questions, especially by member Jane and others have been raised in oversight committee. And so it's repetitive in terms of wanting to understand more. And so, you know, I've said this before in terms of how we make decisions, and maybe this is for our, this is you for Carolyn or for whoever is in charge of the agenda. I just would feel more comfortable about these kinds of decisions if we didn't have time constraints. And this is $1 billion, billions and billions of dollars. On the very last day that Director Foley is on the board, I mean, there's just so much that is going to shift, and we can align the stars, but I just think this is not the way that I would feel comfortable about making decisions in the future. And so I'm not, that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thanks, Director. I do want to make sure no one has felt rushed. We made this the single large item today and gave it over an hour. We've seen it in Oversight Committee, and these are big decisions. We should continue with questions if we have them. I think we also have to always weigh the cost of delay. And I want to encourage board members to take all of the time they need also with staff. I spend a lot of time with VTA staff between meetings to make sure I really understand the issues and ask many more questions than I do in the public meetings, which is really important because inevitably with our busy schedules, even just maintaining quorum is difficult at these meetings when they go beyond 3-4 hours. We know we have many meetings. Our usual meetings go quite late into the evening. So it's really incumbent upon each member of the board to put in the time between the meetings to get a lot of those questions answered. I know Director Jane does that and puts in a tremendous amount of effort and continues to surface really important questions and comments at these meetings, which I appreciate. But I do want to create space now. I always like to, as chair of the meeting, like to flag the timing so people are aware of kind of how much time is allotted and still scheduled. But If folks have additional questions, we should certainly surface them. We still have quorum now. I also would note that there is a real cost and risk to also delaying items unless there's a very clear rationale for what we want staff to bring back. I didn't hear any open items that would prevent us from voting today, but if I missed that, I'd love to know. So let me just turn to colleagues to see if there are additional items. I'm not seeing any. This end, I'm not seeing any. Director Jane.
Yeah, on the Oversight Committee, I was the person pushing the hardest to say, hey, the launch facility will be finished at the beginning of 2027, but we weren't planning to start digging until the beginning of 2029 with a 2-year delay. And I'm like, why? It's $30 million a month. You know, that's you know, $700 million of delay. So, you know, we did pull in the schedule and it requires these early works. But I'm going to vote no simply because I don't fully understand what we're committing to. I know we're committing to the 400, but we're locked in to the 3.5 billion. And I don't think we have an FFGA. When I look at the numbers, we're going to get a rebaseline. But until I see that rebaseline, I am very uncomfortable with the contracting model. And it's only been used in Canada and Australia. As far as I can say, we don't really have expertise here. We didn't do a good job with the PDB of tracking the costs, and we let the costs run away. We should have been in their business, as Sarah said, the whole time. We were not. And then, you know, the transit project at NYU, they say you should pretty much never have contracts more than $1 billion because you're not going to get competitive prices. Now, Bob Goodfellow says, well, there's the interface risk, and I get it, but if you don't want any interfaces, you just give the whole $7 billion project to KST. Then you won't have any interface risk, but that's not how people do projects. That's not how you get the best price. So I won't be supporting this. We have to start some early work stuff, but I just am uncomfortable with the whole package of $3.5 billion.
Thanks, Director Jane. Can I just ask staff a quick follow-up question on Director Jane's, one of his comments? This point about whether or not we are locked in, as beyond the 400 million, that's the next phase of work that keeps us moving forward. How locked in are we? What contractual protections and leverage do we have going on? Can you just tell us what is baked into this contract that protects us if for some reason we think we need to make a change or there's some externality related to federal funding? Though I would maintain that we need to deliver something of value with or without federal funding, given how many state and local dollars we're committing at this point.
Yeah, I think I'm going to let Anna answer that very precisely. I think it's a legal
Sure.
question.
So because this isn't a fixed price contract, that 2.4 billion is just the target. So as Tom said, it is about just really committing KST to that is the target price. As it is a target price, we have the flexibility to manage VTA's financial exposure at any one time. So that's that maximum funding curve that Tom has referenced. And that 400 million, that is all that KST would be authorized. But we're not even on the 400, we're not committing to that. It is a reimbursable, so as costs come in, we verify them, and we only pay what are allowable reimbursable costs. So we only pay the actual costs incurred. If at the end of the 400 million has been spent, board would have to authorize additional spend. It would increase the maximum funding curve. If some externality happened, then you would always have the ability for termination for convenience as well.
Thanks for summarizing those contractual elements and those protections. Okay, do we have other questions from the board? Any other topics that deserve more discussion?
Vice Chair?
Sure, Chair. Yes, almost forgot you were there. Sorry, go ahead.
No problem. I will be extremely brief as we've discussed this at the committee. But I do appreciate all the work staff has put on this. I appreciate KST I think being a good partner on this piece of it and the discussions. I will be supporting the motion given the points that have been previously made. But we'll just express that for our staff, we are really looking to you to continue nothing new, but to continue the oversight. I really think that this paint share, gain share model will help us get there, and I just want to recognize the significant progress that represents.
Thanks, Chair. Appreciate those comments. Anybody else? Okay, Director Sell.
In the meantime, if we do approve this, will there be feedback to us? Yeah, things are going right, or, you know, these like indications that we're going in the right direction, like just summaries. That would be great at the board level.
Yes, absolutely. In the same way that we bring updates on the West Portal every month with very detailed above and below budget, we'll do the same for this.
Great. Thanks, Director. Okay. I don't see any other hands. It appears we've exhausted questions and comments. So, Elaine, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Yes, Vice Chair. This is for 8.1, motion by Foley, seconded by Abekoga. Abekoga?
Aye.
Arenas?
Yes.
Candelas is absent. Cohen is absent, so I'll call on Mulcahy.
Yes.
Foley?
Aye.
Jane?
No.
Okay. Kamei is absent. Sell?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Weinberg?
Yes.
Mahan?
Aye.
Lopez?
Aye.
Motion passed, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you. We're on to item 9.1, items of concern and referral to administration. Are there any referrals from colleagues? Director Jane.
Yeah, I have been very concerned about the CapEx and OpEx costs of this project. Once it's completed, I estimate it's going to be $300 to $500 million of O&M and CapEx going forward, and I'd like to see a funding path for how we're going to fund that.
Okay, administration, or staff? Okay. Carolyn's nodding that she's got the referral. Thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any others. We are on to announcements. Our next board meeting is Thursday, August 6th at 5:30 p.m. here in the county chambers. Any other announcements? I just want to announce, and I think she just stepped away, but Director Foley's last meeting, as I think you all heard, was today. I just want to thank her for her service. At least it's on the video. We can show her later. It happened. Director Foley, let's do that one more time. We got you a fancy soccer ball to celebrate. But there'll be much more we'll be saying later in the year. But since this is your last meeting on the VTA board, just want to thank you sincerely for showing up prepared, asking great questions, and just being a great member of the board. We appreciate it. Thank you, Director. All right. Finally, public comment. Is that right? We have item 4, general public comment, which was postponed to this point in the meeting, reserved for person desiring to address the board on any items within the board's jurisdiction that was not on today's agenda.
Chair, we have a request to speak from James Whiteman, but I don't see him in the room.
Okay.
But I do believe we have some hands raised in Zoom.
Okay, we'll go to those
That
now.
is correct. Before I call the speakers, we have received written public comments that are already posted on our portal. The speakers are Roland, followed by Jordan, and then Rob. Roland, go ahead, please, and begin speaking.
Thank you, Chair. This is really a follow-up on what I said earlier this month when you approved the PMP contract. And your previous contract was with 2 firms, HNTB and Foster Dublica, and the new contract was with HNTB and WSP USA. Well, guess what? WSP USA is Boston Brinkerhoff. So I just sent you all a little expose going back to the big dig. And I'm going to give you some of the highlights. It's a detailed history of financial deception and structural failures associated with Boston Brinkerhoff projects like the Big Dig and Los Angeles Method. The investigation highlighted systemic issues, including deliberately falsified cost estimates, and I assure you we're going to go back and revisit that. The utilization, fraudulent payroll scheme, and significant construction disasters. But in closing, you got to scroll back 15 years and understand what Boston's Brinkerhoff is. These people are the root cause of what happened to Ashley Ray in California. And we need to do something about it because we headed in exactly the same direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jordan. Go ahead, please, and begin speaking.
Hi. Have a happy summer. I also encourage folks to meet with VTA staff to talk about the upcoming Express Lane Strategic Plan. And I hope you'll have some tough questions that haven't been answered satisfactorily in the advisory committees. How come staff wants to add new lanes to 6 different highways and only discloses the additional lanes for 2 of those highways in the slides and buries the other 4 near the very end of the plan? Why do we continue to say that this is a climate positive project, yet at the same time we're looking for exemptions to get out of mitigating the VMT increases that we know are going to happen whenever you add new lanes to a highway, regardless of whether they're express lanes or not? So please ask tough questions of staff, and please make sure that you get direct answers to the questions that you ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Rob. Please go ahead and begin speaking.
As you can read in the public comment section of the agenda, rather than thinking about using PRT transit simply in a corridor like mass transit, it is best to think about areas of service. For example, a PRT corridor could connect Diridon Station with Bart Berryessa, a distance of about 3.5 miles with 8 pod car stops for about $100 million. Better still would be serving an area of 10 square miles with PRT that includes both transit hubs. At the cost around $700 million, we would get 80 pod car stops in neighborhoods and popular destinations, so people in that 10 square miles could walk or scoot to a pod car stop at any time of day, enter a cab, and be whisked to another pod car stop quicker than driving. Please think areas of service rather than corridors.
That's the last speaker, Vice Chair.
All right, thank you. We'll now close public comment, and with that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. See you soon.